Strap in, folks. Embarrassing, disgraceful. That's only from Stephen O'Donnell post-match conference that I just heard the last couple of minutes. We're not even going to hang about an intro here, folks. I think we're just going to bring in the Coot Chicago Bull. We're going to be joined by Chris later on. We're just going to get stuck straight into this, folks. Thank you. Good evening or good afternoon as it is over there to yourself. Good night over here. But it's not a good night, Pingu, is it? It's an absolute annihilation of a night. If you just read the comments and the stuff coming in from Twitter, and my God, I don't want to sound too drastic straight out the road, but it's up there with one of the worst nights. It's got to be.
What an episode to come back on. Fucking hell. Yeah, it's not good. It's probably the first time since 2012 you've really seen that anger online. Yeah. You know, I think even you go back only 2 years ago. I mean, we don't want to talk about what happened 2 years ago, but I don't think things were as bad, and the kind of reaction, I don't recall it being as bad 2 years ago as what we're seeing tonight. You know, it was, I know we said offline we're not really going to talk about the match because, like, really, where do you start and where do you end? You know, it's just horrific, isn't it? It's just one of them where I think, as you say, I haven't seen Stevie's comments yet, but embarrassing is kind of the undertone, isn't it? It's you want to go out and have some semblance of a performance, but that's just, I mean, look, it's unacceptable, and I'm sure Stevie knows that too. You know what I mean? But we're here to debate all that tonight. But yeah, just absolutely shocking.
It's a game that I put it up earlier on Twitter. You know, I think it was 2-0 at this stage, and I kind of thought, you know, we said a couple of weeks ago, I think we dialed Newbury when the draw came out, and we said, I kind of said, you know, it's a game nobody wanted. It's a draw you didn't want. You would have rather really go to Pats or go to Cork. Galway just have that season in them, and that season's been coming in the first division. They've been excellent for years and just missed out. But even at our poorest, I kind of thought, you know, we'll stick it up to them. Yeah, they're on a good run. They're 15 points clear in the first division. But my God, the quarterfinal of an FAI Cup, like, you know, this is the second time he's been knocked out with first division opposition at the quarterfinal stage. But, you know, considering what's going on in the league, you know, with the European run that we're not going to get in the league, you kind of thought, you know, we're going to be up for this. But it's regardless of results, how good Galway were or what it's finished. We weren't in the game at all. Like, it was nothing. Like, we produced nothing. We had no chances. We had very little of the ball. It was just, and a lot of people have said the same thing on Twitter tonight. It's been coming, and it's just probably come. We probably could have done with it coming in a league game, maybe, because we were kind of out of that competition. But, you know, the fact that we've had a road to Aviva looking staring us in the skull for the last couple of weeks, you know, even on a bad day, I never envisaged how poor we'd be tonight. It's a real, you know, like, you can tell we're coming up on 10 to 11 at night, and we're up to like 40 viewers. Usually we kind of hover around the 20 at this stage, but there's an overriding feeling tonight of enough's enough, you know, and I think that's a real worry now going forward. That's why we have the ticker tape running across the bottom. We usually have our pizza, usually have your comments. You know, this is what we're talking about tonight. Where does the club go from here? What are we? It's not a one-off. You know, it's not like we're going to Rovers on the back of a good run and just got a bad day in the cup. We've gone to Galway after being heavily beaten by Derry a couple of weeks ago, albeit we've had chances in the game, but they haven't turned it into anything. I really worry now what's, you know, our fans going to now find, like, I know there was a bit of, you know, booze and giving out from the away supporters, 300 odd of them going to Galway tonight. It's a real, just one of those nights that you talk about team selection, real strange team selection. You know, the 3 subs after half an hour, you know, basically admitting that they got the selection wrong, going to try and change it in the first 30 minutes, but the game was gone. It's such it's a culmination of all the bad things that have happened to us have all come together on one night tonight, in my opinion. It's just been an absolute travesty.
Yeah, it's going back to kind of where you started there, Gally. You know, you were saying about, you brought it up whenever the draw was made, and we drew Galway's. Like, they're on a very, very good run in the first division. In saying that, Dundalk is a club who has aspirations of going to Europe every year, and we should be challenging for Europe, and league form hasn't been great. Like, all season you've heard people saying the players aren't good enough, the players are this, the players are that. But something is just not clicking. I don't necessarily believe. I don't know if we have the quality. Well, I know we don't have the quality that we had maybe last year in terms of the players we got in, like Stephen Bradley's, Jamar Conley's, etc. But there's still a team there that should be capable of challenging for Europe, and you would think a team like that is capable of challenging, for top 4, top 3, top 4 in the league is capable of beating a team in the first division, albeit the team that's running away with the first division, and to go there and get absolutely humbled in the first 35 minutes is it's nothing short of shocking. Like I'd say Stevie was shell shocked on the sideline, but it seems to be the kind of the tale of our season, isn't it? There's games I see that Mark Carolan put it up, like how can it be the same team that held off Rovers with 10 men? It's a very similar conversation than what's been happening with Stephen Kenny over the last 2 weeks. Is those spirited results against the top teams are easy. It's easy to get motivated for them, but it just seems like we lack motivation when it comes to playing teams that are perceived to be below us, and that seems to be the case tonight. When you go down that many goals so early, or even just in the first half, is it a case that the players just expected it was going to be easier than it was? You know what I mean? Like, are they just going through the motions? Like, for me, as a Dundalk fan, I probably speak for most fans, it's great to win a league title, but there is something special about Dundalk FC in the cup. And for me, it just seems like it's been completely the mark of that has been completely missed tonight. And especially in probably the pre-match team talk, because how do you go out and perform like that in the first half? You know what I mean? Like, that's just shocking.
And it's beyond like you said there. It's almost, it became a tradition, really, a yearly trip to the Aviva. I know, look, we were blessed all those years ago, but it'd be different if the league was kind of, if we were kind of in the running for the league. You kind of say, right, the heads might be turned on the cup, but we're not. We're out of the league. Like, it's just such a. Like, you'd love to say, right, 30 minutes into the game, we've just had an absolute nightmare. We had a nightmare 90 minutes, or whatever it was played, 95, 96. We never got going. Subs made no difference. The selection, there was quite, and we're not going on hindsight here. There was tweets out before the game even started how surprising the selection was. You kind of get these conspiracies of, you see lads in videos. I seen one comment, and look, there could be something in it. Boys not looking too happy arriving to the pitch with there's something going on. We don't know. Look, it's just talk, but it just all culminates in those type of nights that, it's just. I really don't know. Like, you can see I can read even the boys here that always comment, Days on Mark, John Callan, Frank. I can feel the anger. Like, it's not really put across in it, but you can feel the anger of these boys. And for the people who travel, I nearly debated myself during the week. I was going to take the wheel with me just as well. Like, you hear people, James Rogers tweeting people leaving at half time, 35 minutes into the game. That's not the Dog fans. The Dog fans don't leave early. No matter what's happened in the game of football, they always stay at the end. The majority probably did, but the fact that they're even debating whether it be a long trip home or not, if you're 4-0 up at half time, they're not going to be leaving early. It's just a real. I just want to use the word sucker punch, but it's not a sucker punch. It's an absolute just a disgrace. They're like, and I've seen some harsh tweets tonight that would probably be perceived as harsh, but I don't think they are. I think everybody's been on the money tonight, and I think it's a real. And look, Stevie hasn't held back, and I only heard a bit with Adrian Taff on LMFM, and embarrassing, disgraceful. I think he got into the team, which is the least they can do at the minute. But I'm lost for words how bad it was. I really am. I just found it such a poor game. And like, Galway, it's not that Galway were a bad team. We're not talking about Galway. Galway were excellent, but we just had no answer for them. And it's been coming for the last couple of weeks. And the question has to be asked now. And we're going to bring in a well-known Dundalk fan here as well. Jane, welcome to the show. I think on a night tonight, it's perfect to get somebody like yourself on as well. Chris will be joining us in a couple of minutes. He was filming a draw the match tonight. But Jane, you probably can sum it up. But like, what are you thinking? What's running through your
mind? And I have the reputation on this podcast for being positive, and I've nothing. Like, I literally have nothing, Gally. I've nothing.
Else. It's
just we come on like within the first 5 minutes. You just knew it just wasn't It wasn't our night, you could say, but it was just, there was no quality, there was no connection, there was no passion.
Yeah.
It didn't look like they were playing for the Aviva.
It almost felt like, that's what I was saying to Pingu, it almost felt like we had something else to play for. You know,
Yeah.
like the cup wasn't really that. Not that it wasn't important. The cup's always important, no matter what stage of it, what position in the
Yeah,
league
but
you are.
I know what you're saying. You're
They
saying we
almost
have to get
forgot.
the
They almost
league,
forgot.
or
Like I don't know. Pingu brought up there that they might have taken Galway for granted. If they took Galway for granted going on Galway's season, and like they could have very well have, but if they had, none of them should be playing football next year. Because you shouldn't be taking a team like Galway and the run that they're on with the management setup that they have. They've been knocking on the door of the Premier League for the last couple of seasons. They're a Premier League team. They've been top class. I think James Rogers said 90 plus goals in all competitions this season or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
to take them for
Unbeaten
granted
at home.
is just
Unbeaten
ridiculous.
at home.
Yeah.
And you're kind of saying, okay, they score at home, we'll come back. And we just don't have that coming back fight. Do you remember we'd watch us and we might go 1-0 down and we would attack and we kill till we got even and go better. And we just couldn't. We just didn't have that passion. It wasn't there. And the team selection, you're beating your previous game, you're beating 3-1 at home, and you pick the same team.
Yeah. Would it maybe, I'm just wondering, Pingu, I'll get your, from the coaching background as well, would you, it's a good point Jane raised there, the same team, obviously now we look at it and go, right, well, that was obviously, and there was, in fairness, there was tweets out beforehand, it was probably a wrong call, but is it to maybe show faith that, these boys can play? Is it maybe a foolish look at, right, well, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, because we've had some chances against Derry in Oriel Park and we haven't turned them into anything. And is it just backfired, or is it just a stupid decision to make on a night that was in it, considering the physicality and the speed of not just Galway, of any John Caulfield team, and that's assisted with Ollie Hogan. I mean, they're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, I think after the Derry game, right, we lost that game, but we did actually play very well. So I think from a coaching perspective, you might want to hold on to the starting 11, albeit it just seemed like the positions they were put in was a bit kind of all over the place, But I think, look, for me, in a game like that, I think, and I me, Gally, I don't like naming individuals before a game who would make a difference. But I think for me, Ryan O'Kane starting, like Ryan O'Kane would still be a relatively unknown quantity for me within league circles. Like John Caulfield and Ollie Horgan probably wouldn't know a whole pile about him.
Yeah,
so I think putting someone like him on from the start probably would have made a bit of a difference. He's energetic, he gets going, and to start the game so lethargic. And as Jane said, I think Donald was messaging me privately after the first goal went in. You knew we weren't going to come back, and that's I don't remember, even in the days of Filippo and Vinny and the last season with Pick 6, I don't remember ever actually feeling like there was absolutely no chance we would come back. You know what I mean? And today was the first time where once that first goal came in, I feel like the fate wasn't there that we were going to score, or we were going to get back into it. And that's probably, I'd say, where most of people's sadness and frustration coming out of the match is once that first goal went in, you knew it was game over. You're talking about fans leaving at 35 minutes. Some supporters could have left after 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And the result, like the scoreline will be different, but the result's going to be the same. It's that's the kind of sad reality I feel like we're faced with now, is you just don't know if we have it in us, or if the players have that fight in them to make a comeback when the chips are down. Which, like I say, I think it goes back to, it's easy to do it against your Derry Cities, your Shamrock Rovers, because they're big clubs. But when you're playing against a Galway, and this is a big game, you know what I mean? Sorry, I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but the club,
no, absolutely,
Dundalk themselves have billed this as a massive game between them and Galway. And it seems like it wasn't treated as such, and I hate even saying that, because I don't like saying players don't try, because I genuinely don't believe they didn't put any effort in, but just something has gone horribly wrong. Something tonight has gone really, really wrong, and it's
really wrong.
It's easy for us to sit here and blame everything, but I would love to, as a coach, know what it is that went wrong. you know what I mean? It's just it's frustrating. I'm rambling a little bit now, so I'll pass it on to one of you
No,
two. But
I think if ever there's going to be a night for having a ramble, it's tonight. Like, I mean, it's. I think there's a lot of built up anger. I think a lot of fans, and it's
Yeah.
a night for absolutely letting go. I think something you've said there, Pingu, just even on, and I think Jane mentioned just before you that we never looked like we'd get back into the game. But the worst thing for me is most of the teams we've played this year, and probably particular tonight, Galway, when they went 1-0 up, they probably thought, well, the dog won't come back from this, because they generally don't. I mean, it's very rare we come from 1-0 down or whatever it may be, 4-0 after 40 minutes. That we might give a team a game. 9 times out of 10, when we go 1-0 up or 1-0 behind, we don't get back into it. And that's probably more annoying. That is it slipping into the psyche of the players that, oh, well, this is normal, this is a normal thing. And have Galway maybe gone, well, absolutely, we go 1-0 up here, the chances of them coming back into it is highly unlikely. Is that something you think, Jane, that would be slipping into, especially on nights like that?
And I totally, and we spoke about this while watching the game. And we walked in to watch the game, and I said, if we don't score first, we're in trouble. We have to score first this season. The team that we are this season, if we don't score first, and I'm repeating myself, but we did say it, they were so into us. Like Pat Hoban, we talk about the fortress in Oriel. They had a fortress around Pat Hoban tonight. Like, they knew him. He couldn't move. He couldn't and that's something we should be ready for.
I think you've hit a good point there, Jane. I feel like it again this season, and because Pat's been in such good form for the last two years, if that happens, right, if he's neutralised, it doesn't seem in a lot of games like there's a plan B to that, other than bring John Martin off the bench. And in fairness, he does pop up with his fair share, but it doesn't seem like in a game where we keep or the opposition team keeps Pat Hoban quiet, what's our next option? It doesn't really seem like there is. Do you know what I mean? And that's probably, well, not probably, that's a problem, I think.
Yeah. Like, I felt so much for him tonight, because he was like, we talk about the fortress in Oriel, and Galway put a fortress around Pat Hoban tonight. Like, they held him, that he couldn't do anything, and we should be ready for that. Like, we should be prepared for that.
Jane, as kind of I know as a lifelong supporter, and Pingu had opened the show, we were talking about games years gone by with the likes of we had Ignoli, and we had Finney, and obviously Stephen Kenny before that. But even that kind of angle, the last couple of months, the last couple of games, maybe probably the last half a dozen games. I know it's been early in the season as well, but there seems to be just this little bit of building up each week. This little bit of anger about selections and substitutes and the performance, and near misses. And are we looking now at something that as you as a fan, you might hear a bit more. Obviously we're on the podcast, we get comments in, but you heavily involved with the club and that over the years. Like, what do you think it's going to be an issue now, or the question is going to be raised of, is there going to be a major change here? Or are we going to have to maybe look at something down the line? I know we've only got half a dozen games to the end of the season, but is it time to maybe, like Frank Carroll, you had mentioned the money, and these lads are full-time footballers,
and I think, Gilly, never mind football, we all have to answer in our jobs. And I don't want to be personal about anyone, but we all have to perform. We all have to answer. We all have to answer. And we all have to say, we all have to say, today wasn't a good day. We all have to answer to our performance in our job. And I don't want to be personal attacking it. I'm not a football. I'm not owners. I'm not investors. But I think we are now at a stage that maybe we have to ask them questions.
Pingu, not to put you on the spot, but even if it's like I suppose, Stevie's come in from the Pats, the whole rigmarole of Pats and giving out that he stole him this kind of crack and blah blah blah. Remember them days? But I seen a tweet tonight, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying it was Alan Matthews put a tweet tonight, and it's something maybe if he wasn't Stevie O'Donnell, would we be looking for a change? That's the I'm not advocating here for that. I'm not saying that we have to do this, do that. I'm just saying, like, is it because we hold this man such in high esteem because of what he's done for the club, or is it a player issue? Is it a facility? Is it an ownership? Is he just not getting what he wants? Is he not getting the back end that he wants? We've obviously signed Darryl Hogan a lot of weeks ago. Durant's come in as well. Brownlee's come in. Are we looking at something bigger than what Stevie's trying to achieve, or are we kind of being reluctant to kind of say, yeah, well, he needs to be held accountable here because he's Stephen O'Donnell?
Yeah, I was thinking about this before we got on, like how I've been thinking about this for a while, and I think I brought it up on the podcast before. Is I think there's an element of our support and an element of people around town. I'm not blaming the support for anything that happened tonight. Just I want to preface that before I go on this little ramble, but it seems like we've wanted everything from the Stephen Kenny era all the time. We wanted Robbie Benson back. We got Robbie Benson back. We wanted Andy Boyle back. We got Andy Boyle back. We wanted Skip once Stat Sports lads and Andy Conley came back in charge. We got that. We wanted Darryl Horgan. We got him. Now, you want the John Mountney back. We got John. And you look at all them, and this is with the greatest respect to these lads, because they're all club legends. And no matter what has happened over the last 6-7 months, that's never going to change. But, and I think I said it on the podcast before, Gally, and maybe you'll remember this or maybe you won't, but I don't see a huge benefit in getting it. When you look at those players that I just mentioned, when you take Skip out of it for a second, but you look at the players that I mentioned, right? Andy Boyle, when he's played, always gives 100%. You can't doubt that. But because of injury, how much of Andy Boyle have we actually seen since he came back? And I'm trying to ask honest questions here. And again, this is nothing against Andy at all. When we look at Darryl Horgan, I see people like Darryl he's in pre-season mode probably right now, you know what I mean, since he came back. So we're probably not going to see the best of him until next season. John Mountney, unfortunately, if we're being honest, and again, this is nothing against John Mountney, the person, John Mountney, the player, that hasn't worked out over the last 2 years because unfortunately for John, he's been getting injuries. You look at Robbie Benson, one of the best centre midfielders in the league. Have we seen that really from him this season? Because he keeps getting bogged down with injuries as well, And again, as I say, I'm not trying to call it out as such of like that these are bad players. They're not bad players. We all know how good they are. But I think we're overly reliant on the Stephen Kenny era and looking for people from within that era. And I think there's an issue at play. And I don't know if it's the club who's to blame. Because the reason why I said I was thinking about this beforehand was you go on Twitter and you find out Darryl Horgan's a free agent 3 months ago. Every Dundalk fan is saying, almost every Dundalk fan is saying, let's bring Darryl Horgan back. And I think I might have said it to you lads in the group chat at the time, like, why? And I'm not saying he's not a quality player, but are we going to get the same Darryl Horgan back? And I'm just using him as an example, but are we going to get the same Darryl Horgan back that we had previously? And I would say the same with, we wanted Stephen O'Donnell, not because of his pedigree as a manager. If we're all being bluntly honest, and he done a great job last season. I think he done a really, really good job for us last season, but we wanted Stephen O'Donnell back because he was the captain in the Stephen Kenny era. And he hadn't, I think by the time that he was kind of being muted to come to us, he hadn't even won the cup at Pats at the time. He hadn't got his pro license, which is something that Filippo was ridiculed for. Filippo didn't have his pro license, but we wanted him back. And there's not many Dundalk fans that can sit and listen to this tonight and say they didn't want him back, because most people, and I'll say I was delighted to get him too. I was over the moon when we got him, right? But everybody is saying now suddenly it's one of those, be careful what you wish for, you know what I mean? Because despite winning the cup with Pats, he didn't have a ton of experience. And I feel like that's maybe a little bit coming to fruition. Now, I still think he's potentially going to be a fantastic manager. Whether that continues with Dundalk Football Club or not, it remains to be seen. I do think, given how results have gone, if they continue to trend this way, I mean, his time probably won't be with Dundalk much longer. But I just feel like at some point we need a refresh. We need to forget the Stephen Kenny era is gone. That successful era is gone. If we want to get back to where we were before, we need to rebuild again. And I think maybe we don't need to get rid of every player that was in the Stephen Kenny era, but I think we need to stop looking at that and stop looking at Daryl Horgan 7 years later or 6 years later to come back, and these players coming back all the time. I just, as I say, I've gone on a big ramble there, but it's something that I've wanted to say publicly for a long time, and I just feel as a club we need to stop looking back there and just getting back in reliable heads who were good 5, 6, 7 years ago, because you don't know what you're getting back. And they've gone to England and maybe didn't have the best time, so their confidence is different. When they were here back then, they were playing in the team that was making Europe, where confidence was sky high. Players are coming from playing on grass pitches all the time that now they're playing on an AstroTurf, where I think it's plain to be seen some players can't handle it, especially when the body gets older and they're getting older. Their body can't handle playing on the turf all the time. So I think look, we can blame anybody. I think, you know what I mean? Like, we can turn around, we can make this podcast a podcast that blames the owners, right? But what benefit is that going to do? We can sit here, we can blame Stevie O'Donnell. What good is blaming? You know, we can make this podcast whatever we want, and we can look at the comments and we can blame the players, we can blame whoever. I think there's a whole lot. I think it's probably a mix of all of them. Do you know what I mean? Together, that's an issue. So I've gone on a big rant there, but it's something that I've wanted to say for months now, maybe even longer than that.
Yeah, no, it's just what as you were talking. No, that's what these podcasts are for. It's like what Michael was saying there. It's not that we're conservative. It's just we put the questions out. You know, this is look. You know, the worst case scenario, you know, is for any club is losing a manager. But what we're asking is kind of, you know, with the way things have gone, with everything, you know, recruitment, like you say, Pingu, the ownership, we all wanted this. You know, is it working out? And, you know, at the minute, it's really not. You know, I think we mentioned in Niall Newbury probably about half a dozen games ago. You know, I think I put it to him, I think it was after the Shells match. I had put it to him that, you know, if we didn't get the run in Europe, we got knocked out, a run for Europe in the league, and we got knocked out of the cup, is his job on the line? And, you know, he was pretty much, well, it has to be, because that's the aim. I mean, European football is the aim for this club. And if you're not hitting your targets, like Jane had said, it's as simple as anything else. If you're hired to do a job and you're not hitting your targets, and it'd be different if you're not getting, you know, we don't know if he's getting the backing, or, you know, as Frank has mentioned, the recruitment has to be questioned. The recruitment stops at the manager at the end of the day. You know, like, there's obviously a list, you know, preferred list maybe that he doesn't get, but even the backup list has got to be good. And, you know, for one thing or another, these players haven't worked out. You know, this season, the loans and the signings in from January haven't really been of League of Ireland level. I mean, experience-wise, I'm not saying they have to be a certain talent, but they've got to have a drive, and ideally you'd like them to have a little bit of a League of Ireland experience with them. But, you know, you have to agree with Frank on the recruitment. But just go back to Michael's comment. Yeah, look, that's what the podcast is for. It's an open podcast. We don't, every comment goes up. We're not conservative. It's just we're interested to know what the lay of the land with everybody, and that's why we couldn't wait to get this podcast off the ground. We didn't want to wait so late as it came on. But it's no Pingo, that's just a correct. You're not going on a rant. You're. This is what it's for. We're here to kind of say, right, well, this is my opinion, and, you know, we're not tied to anybody. We're not, you know, we don't get our mouth sealed with anybody. We're an open-ended podcast, and Mark, it's something that came up. I think we'd mentioned, I can't remember if it was Kieran Callan maybe had mentioned it, or David Lennon a couple of weeks ago had mentioned it. There seems to be that little bit of naivety, I suppose. It's getting a bit of on the cross, not the cross, on the set pieces from, and it's something we bring up. Chris would definitely have the dad on that when he jumps in, and it's something he brought up with Kieran a couple of weeks ago, so we definitely get his take on that when he jumps in. Just to bring it in back, Jay, sorry, Jay, we lost you there. Jay, we're just talking about, you know, the future of, you know, people's opinions on the future of the management and what's gone wrong. And, you know, ultimately, like you said, you know, the buck's got to stop with them. You know, that, unfortunately, that's just the way football results are. Like, if the managers aren't pulling their weight, or the players aren't getting the job done on the field, it falls at the manager's feet. It's like any job, you're going to be ridiculed for not hitting targets. And, you know, we're on a slippery slope now, manager-wise. I think, you know, he's come out tonight and he's lambasted the players, and he's taken a bit of stick from the fans, and in my opinion, rightly so. That's what goes with sport and the club that we are. And
absolutely, and Gally, we have fans there that are traveling all day, taking time off work, gone to support their club. They deserve more, I think. You know, they deserve more, and I don't agree with abusing anyone personally, obviously, but I think sometimes a club and a manager and a team have to hear how we feel.
Yeah. Well, we're going to definitely hear how this producer slash filmmaker slash go-getter in Weavers Park fields tonight. Obviously at Weavers Park, Chris Clark, welcome to what's been, it has been hectic. We've gotten into it. Pingu's gone on a Chicago Bull, Coot Hill kind of Jordan Peterson style talk there a second ago, but and rightly so, nothing wrong with it. Chris, we brought up we haven't even discussed the game tactics. We haven't discussed anything. We've just basically been discussing.
Well, don't worry, because I haven't seen it either. So happy days.
Yeah. So like, I don't think you've had to. I don't think you've had to have seen tonight's match to put in a comment. I think the ticker tape. I made the ticker tape specifically for tonight because we've never had to put up pizzas. There's no point in putting up that tonight. But it literally is. Where do we go from here? You know, it's such a poor. It's beyond poor. Poor doesn't call. It's disgraceful. That's the word for tonight. It's disgraceful and embarrassing. I think that seems to be going around on the socials. From what you've read and heard, you know, you commented into the private group we have. You couldn't believe the scoreline of 4-0, and you know, it didn't get.
Couldn't. I was. No, it doesn't seem to be. I like. Paul Crowley was beside me, and he was just kind of nudging me every so often, just shaking his head in disbelief. Like, couldn't believe what was going on. I think you can lose to Galway no problem in the cup, but like that's just unacceptable. That's just unacceptable. That sort of a performance in the first half. I listened to Stephen O'Donnell's post-match interview there. I think you mentioned earlier, Gally, like he felt obliged to go over and apologise, and he just sounded so deflated in his interview as well. I think that says a lot about where Stephen O'Donnell has come now, with this team as well. I think he's clearly frustrated. It's from the high levels in a team that he played with. This is way levels below that. It's unacceptable. You know, and I think the least Stephen O'Donnell and that staff can do is apologise to those fans for travelling over. But the fact they shouldn't have to is more to the point. But it's like I watched Drogheda lose tonight, but they were credible in their defeat.
I think that's the major issue with this club at the minute. This team, it's not that they're being bet, because I always said Dundalk fans, you know, who've watched this team. I've watched them. 95 was my first game, so we're going on what are we going on? 30 years. It's not. Long. It's performance. It's too long. At this stage, it is too long. But it's performance. You can take a beating. You can take a beating any night of the week. But if you're not putting it up to the opposite, and that's been the consistent problem with this team all season, they just haven't been at the race at all. I mean, Jane had mentioned, Pink had mentioned really early on in the show that we're back to this crap of when Galway go 1-0 up, they know they're not. There's every chance they won't get anything. They're not going to get any fight back, because it's rare it happens. Now, obviously, look at 1-0, 2-0. It's not the end of the world, but then you're making 3 subs after 30 minutes to kind of make up for the fact that you've picked the shocker of a team to start the game. It's just a real, you know, we've questioned there's no right to question anything, but as fans, I think we're long overdue saying, look, at these selections are, you know,
I think it's a fair. I do, Gally, think it's a fair question that you would select the same team that was beaten 3-0. Well, sorry, 3-1 in Oriel. I think that is a fair question, that you would pick the same team. I don't think that's an unfair question. I don't think that's an attack on Stephen O'Donnell. I think that is a fair question.
I listened just I was able to listen to you guys just at the very start when I got into the car, and I was listening to. By the way, Pingu, good to have you on. By the way, always good to have a fan of the show on. But you know, Pingu, you mentioned as soon as we went 1-0 down, you could just see we weren't going to come back from this, and you talked about, you know, under previous regimes and stuff like that, what, you know, the character and stuff we showed to get back into it, and I think you could even go back to even, you know, like when Darius was there and we were really in through, we were still going into those games thinking we can get something out of this. We just need a point out of this, and you know, you could see a commitment level from every single player there to try to get themselves out of this cauldron that we found ourselves in that time, to get ourselves into that, to the relegation playoff that ended up happening there with Waterford. But it just doesn't look like there's any fight in this team at the moment. And that's the real scary part, isn't it? That's just open to the floor.
Yeah, it is, Chris. It's terrifying. But you see a team walking on tonight, and it's like, how are you?
Exactly. Like if you go back right from our defeat to KA, which was the 27th of July, we've had one win, which was a fairly one win in the league, which is a fairly underwhelming victory over Sligo, and a really underperforming performance in Bray in a 1-0 victory. That's been it since the 27th of July. That's poor run. You know, there's a 4-0 defeat tonight. It's a 3-1 defeat to Derry. It's a 1-0 defeat to Shamrock Rovers. It hasn't been good over the past while. I think that's fair to say. It's since that Shamrock Rovers victory in Oriel Park in the Cup, maybe at the start. I think that's probably the last half-decent game we've played.
It's hard to believe watching tonight that we knocked Rovers out of the Cup.
Do
you know what I mean? To
Definitely.
get there. And I don't get me wrong, we're not. This is not a disrespect for Galway. Galway United are a fantastic setup, and we knew this is what we were talking about earlier, Chris. You know, Pingu mentioned, you know, did they underestimate? Like, in my opinion, I hope they didn't. But if any players underestimated Galway tonight, they shouldn't get a new contract. Like Galway are on like a crest of a wave. They are like John Caulfield's team. Everybody knows what you're going to get. They're going to be tough to beat. They're going to be quick. They're going to be physical. They're going to move the ball really well.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Like, it's just, I can't fathom what happened. Like, over 90 minutes, we were never in it. But those first 30, like, it should have been 5. Your man was straight in a goal. I can't remember who it was. He was straight in a goal and he slipped. Like, it should have been 5-0 at halftime. Like, scandalous. Like, it was like what we done to Athlone a couple of seasons ago. 11-0 in the semi-final of the Cup. It was like one of them. I thought we were going to get one of them beatings. And it's just, it's like you were just talking about the wins over the last couple of, like, again,
but it's the performances though as well, Gally. That's probably the most disappointing, because I think
that's what fans can have.
I think some of these performances over the past, we've tried to patch it up and say, well, we played well against Derry, we played well and created chances against Shamrock Rovers, and eventually, you know, we succumbed and we defeated. But there's still all losses, and when you add all those losses up, like, I just don't think we performed well and come out with a victory in a long, long time. And I'd say it's probably Shamrock Rovers in the Cup that time. Otherwise, I'm struggling to think. Like, even games previous to that against Bruno's Magpies, we flattered to deceive in the home leg, and that didn't play well over there at all. Then it was the 2-0 lead against Bows, and we threw that away and lost 3-2. Do you know, it's like there's a liturgy of underperformances, really, probably going back half the season here. And there's also, you know, a fair lot of goals conceded as well in that patch as well, and things that we always said over the past few years that we got to pride ourselves that we've a half decent defence here and we'll make ourselves hard to score against. But like his guys mentioned, once where you score first against Dundalk, there's a very good chance you can go on now and get a second and just kill us, and that's what teams are doing now. The first division team's doing it. Although a very good first division team, but still.
There was a question I saw online, and I thought I'd throw this to the group. Like, is this the rubber stamp? And Chris, you just kind of hit the nail on the head about how we've kind of been playing, how the season has gone. You know, is this the rubber stamp? And you take even the result tonight or the scoreline tonight, but is this the rubber stamp that we are back to probably where we were under the Ian Foster era, that we're an average League of Ireland Premier Division side? You know what I mean?
Under the Ian Foster and Dean Arshall era.
I was unbeaten in 3 games, Gally, but didn't want to bring it up, but, including the European draw. So, but anyway, no, but like in all seriousness, right? The Fozzie era, the very first season, we were top of the league by the halfway mark, but then we were mid-table. The second season, I think we finished sixth or seventh in the league. But I think that's the reality of where we're at now, isn't it? You know, and I think that's something that, again, it's going to take some of our supporters time to get used to this. Like, this is probably where we're going to be for a while, and I think it's a harsh reality, and we can always demand and we can always want to be challenging for league titles, but this could be where we are for the next 4 or 5 years, you know. And Well, I suppose I'm asking it as a question. Like, what do you lads think? Do you think that maybe that's true? Like, that's where we're going to be at for the next while, or?
Yeah, we could very well be. I mean, the thing about League of Ireland is, not the thing about it, the benefit of League of Ireland is you've got a whole merry-go-round every summer of players. The problem Dundalk are having is most of them are starting to get tied up early. So we're not really in the market. We're pretty much not in the market for any of the, even the young level, the young players that are available to play and make a difference in the squad. We're not usually available for them because we're so late going to a kind of war with transfers and managers. But we could be, yeah. I'm trying to be nice and get a bit of positive. Yeah, we may need to hit the reset button on how we do things. And I don't mean to go back to Stephen Kenny, but that's what he done. He hit the reset button, brand new squad. Now he handpicked them. Look, journeymen, boys from nowhere. I don't know whether you can do that again, but I definitely think we need to look at how we do things as a club. When you look at the youngsters that have gone from under 19s over the years, we've lost so many that have just gone. We just lost Chris as well. We can't even keep our producers. Like, this is what we're dealing with. He's gone to Weaver's Park to produce their podcast, but this is what we're dealing with. I'll just bring Jane back in and just my hammer, but this is what we're dealing. Like, I don't know whether a whole new kind of re-evaluation of everything. I don't mean like an AGM. I mean like a whole. Let's strip the board of everything. Let's see. Like, let's put a 5-year. Like you said, it could be 5 years. Let's put a 5-year plan down. Like, the Dundalk fans are patient. I mean, they've waited a long time. They spent 8-9 years in the first division trying to get out of it. They have patience. And if there's a plan at the end of it, so be it. We still don't have a stadium, albeit not even a revamp of a stadium or nothing concrete. So, pardon the pun on the concrete, but there should be this plan in place, and maybe a reset is what's needed. Maybe now what that reset is, I don't know. How we do our transfer business? Do we take from the 19s? Like we just mentioned, Chris, I don't know if you hear, but we've so many 19s players. We've harped on them, but there's so many that have gotten away and not played for us. Not even more in the senior jersey. They just walked away. Owen Kenny's this exception at the minute down in Wexford, flying. I think he was in the under 18, under 19 panel last week for Ireland. He could be the one to break that mold. But maybe just a whole new, if you look at Bowes came from nowhere. They spent endless amounts of money. Famously under Pat Fenlon had to reset the whole structure. They were tightly in with St. Kevin's in with getting all the infrastructure right, young players coming through. We don't do that. Like, we just don't have that up here, and we should, because we're on the border with Bryce that I know, but there's got to be young talent available, and it comes from the top down. You got to reset the whole thing. A 5-year plan wouldn't be the worst thing, but I definitely take your point on board, Pingo. I don't think we've any right, considering where we are at the minute, to be challenging for a league at the minute. I don't. What's shown over the last couple of weeks is we definitely have the fan base and the want to do it, but we just don't seem to have it behind the scenes to maybe be able to challenge as much as we want and as much as we'd hope. Like we had said at the start of the season, we might be up there for second, third. We're a distant 5th or 6th now, really distant. We're not even, like I know there might be there could be 12, 13 points in it, but we are so far behind everybody else. Even when we talk about players possibly signing for next year, we're not even in anybody's thoughts at all. Look at Galway tonight. If Galway get promoted, when they get promoted, that's the club you're going to want to play for next year. John Caulfield, anybody who's kind of hovering around outside the top 3 or 4 teams, the clubs like that are going to get them. And it's worrying. It really is. Like, even when you take the peak 6, like you mentioned earlier, the peak 6, fiasco over the couple of years. Even when you take that into account, you're probably as worried now as you've ever been as where we go from here. It's a real shame, but sometimes you need this to kind of say, right, well, we really need to revamp the whole thing here, But
sorry, Gally.
Go on,
I think there is potential in those players that we have, and for some reason, and I'm not pointing fingers and I'm not blaming anyone, but I don't think their full potential is being brought out. I do think there is potential in some of those players in front of us.
Yeah,
I know.
I agree. No, I agree with you, Jane. I think again, I think probably the expectation is probably a little bit too high for some of the players as well. You expect them to hit the ground running, but we probably have one of the youngest squads in the league, you would think. You know what I mean? Like, Hooben is the oldest. What age is Nathan Shepherd's still only, 21, 22? You know, so he's probably one of the younger goalkeepers in the league. So we have a young squad. It's just, it's probably that expectation. I think that needs to be tempered. And the one thing, just when you were talking there, Gally, that I was thinking, if we could take any kind of positive out of the match tonight, it's very hard to find any kind of positive. The only probably thing that you could say is the board now knows, now that we're out of the cup, they know or they can start working on what their budget is going to be for next season. So before the season finishes, they're going to know whether it's Stephen O'Donnell or if it's a different manager in place, they're going to know what budget they're going to have to work with. So hopefully it won't be a case of 4 or 5 weeks before the season starts that they're still signing players, or 2 weeks before the season starts we're still signing players. Hopefully the business will be done a little bit earlier. Just kind of to your point as well, like Galway is probably going to get promoted. They're going to be an attractive team to go and play for. And I think probably when you look at it, Shells have probably passed us by as well in terms of if I was a player in the League of Ireland, there's one manager that I would want to play for, it's probably Damien Duff, to be honest. At the minute, I mean, Shells play good football. So as I say, I think this is a bit of a reality check for everybody involved with Dundalk Football Club, the players, the management, the board, the supporters too. Is, you know, buckle up. You're either going to really support Dundalk Football Club over the next few years, or you're not. You know, and I think Dazer McEnany said it there. You know, attendances could suffer, and it's going to be back to the diehards again for the rest of the season. And you know, it's great winning trophies and all that, but the only way that we're going to succeed is getting the supporters through the gate. So people either are going to want to be involved and stick behind the team through thick and thin, and not just through the glory days or not, you know.
I think, and sorry, Dean, just to come back to what I was saying, I think that's what's really frustrating some of the fans as well. They're looking at players and they know they have the potential.
Yep.
And that's very frustrating. Like, we have seen teams that don't have the potential. They can't do it.
Yeah.
When you watch a team and you're like, we know you can do better than this. We know there's more in you than this.
Yeah.
And that's not blaming, and that's not about management, by the way. That's about the individual players, and they have to stand up too. By the way, you know, we can read on Twitter and we can, you know, give out about the management and we can give out about this and we can give out about that, but they have a responsibility too to stand up.
100%. Yep.
And I think that's been shadowed a little bit.
Yeah.
In the sense that we're like, you know, Stephen O'Donnell is taking bullets.
Good point.
Yeah, like I think the whole thing though with where we are as a club, Pingu, like I had this discussion with Niall Newbury only a few weeks ago, like where we used to be able to pick off some of the best players in this league. They were dying to come up to play for Dundalk Football Club because we were one of the most attractive teams to come and play for, and you probably could play with financially would be also beneficial. Now you've Shamrock Rovers, Derry. If you want to stay in Dublin, you've got a good team in Packs, good team in Bows. Now Shell's there with excellent money now as well. So you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clubs ahead of us, all in Dublin. Then after that, you're going to have Galway, like I said, coming over now with the Comer's money, plenty of money in there. So you potentially could get a decent wedge there and a decent wedge in Derry. Like we're way down the pecking order of when it comes to a League of Ireland player picking the club that they can go to. And that's, like you just said, Pingu, it's a reality check of where we are as a club right now. And I think how we galvanize everyone together in this is we have a common plan that we're all looking towards, but that is completely absent right now. I couldn't tell you what Skip's long-term plan for this team is, what the owner's long-term plan for the club is, what the long-term plans for any sort of infrastructure or Oriel Park is.
Yeah.
So how can we galvanize behind poor performances, but we know we could be going in the right direction long-term when we don't have that long-term project? So I think some of our frustration we've had over the past while, we've kind of papered over a lot of it because we've had some sort of success. Last year, qualifying for Europe, getting back to Europe this year, this was all great. But as soon as Europe finished, Now the cup has finished. We realize where we are in the league. I think it's a massive wake up call to where we are now. If we, I would say the best thing for the club to do was to go back and remember its community roots again, and get back in there, get the loyal fans back on board. Because if that is, it's going to be there, we need to maximize the most that fan base can give this club, and to do that, there has to be a plan in place. There has to be something that we're all working towards, and that's absent right now.
You didn't hear when I said that. I was like, those people travel to Galway today. You know, you're taking a half day off work. You're getting a bus. You know, you're spending a lot of money. And I'm putting on my SLO team hat at the moment, saying they deserve more.
Yeah. Jane, there's you know, and I know there's fans that travel to every single away match. It's not cheap for a full season.
And I'm going to use the bus that goes down. It's the same lads every week. Mm-hmm. They travel week in, week out. They give up their half day of work, and they deserve more. We deserve more as a club.
Well, that's it, exactly. Like I think now to get everybody on board, we need to have some sort of plan between now and the end of the season, and that plan has to be a long-term and a short-term plan, based in that from this club to say, look, this season hasn't gone how we'd want it to be, but this is where we want to go, and the only way we do that is such and such. But we don't even have that.
And I think the first thing, Chris, we have to it starts at the top.
100%.
And we have. Do we have ownership of them?
We have to have some sort of engagement right now, because we're in danger of losing the passive fan base, I would say, in and around, because you could say some of these fans are kind of glory hunters, but that's what happens. If you're successful, you get more people attracted to you. But right now, what are we doing as a club to attract new fans in?
I think a lot of them are gone already, though, Chris.
100%.
I think we also, Chris, have to protect the fans that have been there.
Yeah.
All the time.
Well, we have to offer something better, Jane, is what I would say.
Yeah. But we have to. And I've been on with you lads so many times on so many different capacities. Tonight I'm just Jane, annoyed. But
sounds like your column.
Sorry.
It sounds like your column in a newspaper. Jane, annoyed.
Annoyed. Will you help me write it, Chris?
No, God, no, not now.
But no, seriously. When the whistle blew tonight at the end of the game, all I thought of was the people who travelled to Galway. They were the people that I thought of.
Yeah.
I'm gone, am I?
Yeah, like something like Jason Crowley there. It's just that I like even to watch that game tonight, but to travel, I know, look, it's not Cork, but I mean, you're talking 3 hours on the road without stopping. You know, it's a long little trek. Chris, it was something we mentioned. You would have been on the road back from Regis Park there. We Michael Kelly kind of mentioned it there as a reference that, you know, and I think Alan Matthews mentioned that Alan's getting 2 shoutouts tonight. He put up that, you know, we're giving Stevie he's getting a pass because of who he is. You know, if it was a different manager, you know, just a coach that hadn't got the legendary status that Stephen O'Donnell had, would we be looking for his head a long time ago? You know, it's one of the questions. Mark had mentioned it there as well. You know, as with the question of Stephen Kenny and I, would you replace him? You know, obviously it's not. We just have opinions here. We're not looking for people's necks in the chopping block or anything, but it's got to be a question that's got to come up. I mean, the performance just haven't been there, and I don't think I've ever seen as many. Probably as much anger as tonight, and we've had some poor results, but tonight is definitely you know, there's no getting away from it. There really isn't getting away from that question, and I think it's going to have. They're going to have, whether they talk about it publicly or not, it's going to be spoken about.
Yeah, and I think you know, Stevie's not naive enough to know that it's a results business, and that's why he's going to be, you know, at the end of the day, that's what he's going to live and die by, is the results he's getting. And at the moment, results aren't good enough, and he'll know they're not good enough. So I'm sure there's going to be some sort of questions even in his own head right now, for it. Should there be questions for the board on that too? Possibly. You know, this is, once again, like I just said, it's if they come out and said that the board although not happy with performances, are happy with Stephen O'Donnell and what he wants to do with this club. That's fine as far as I'm concerned, because that's some sort of a plan. And then I'd say, okay, so we're backing him, and this is what we're going to do, and let's start helping him more. But I think at the moment there's probably more questions than answers right now. I think that's the real disappointing thing. As I said, just listening to that post-match interview, Steve sounded broken, absolutely broken.
And in fairness, he has come out some weeks and he's tried to put the spin, not a PR spin on it, but
he used to say at the Derry match, didn't he say it was his best performance? But even though it was a 3-1 defeat, and I think that people kind of question that slightly. But now I think there's no stats that's going to back up this to say we done well somewhere.
Yeah,
we know we were outplayed. We were outplayed. It wasn't good enough, and I think long hard looks have to be done at this team and the setup and this club right now. I think we need a direction. Do you know what it's been said a few times before, and it doesn't it just remind you of just a ship out at sea, just bouncing around, no particular direction to be going in. You can't say it's going here, it's going there. It's just bobbing along. Every so often it gets a calm seas and we've a free ride and it's great. But every so often then you hit an absolute storm like tonight and we take a battering. That's what this reminds me of. There's just no direction. There's nobody at the helm in a capacity that's driving this club in a direction. And that's what's needed. I've got no more nautical pieces there to put in. That's me. I'm done.
Bird's eye fish fingers. Pingu, we know you're a busy man. You have to jet off in a minute. You know, just kind of a Jerry Springer kind of Pingu's final thoughts. We might see you now till December. You just never know. We might get you back on again.
See him at the Christmas party.
Yeah, see you at the Christmas party. You know, just going forward. You know, like I can see you're typing away there, probably sending your CV in. But if it's you know, does it just need? Do you think it needs an overall change, or do you just? I don't think we're guilty of tonight in particular of just venting. I don't think we're just annoyed. You know, it's a post-match podcast, but I don't think we can be accused of just, lads, it's just after the game, everybody calm down. I think now we're into serious problem time, and you know, decisions got to be made probably one way or another. And you know, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Like, what would you do? But you know, what's your kind of overriding feeling of the whole thing?
You're saying that there was no ranting going on, Gally. I had about 4 months worth of rants saved up that just came out tonight over the case of 45 minutes or so. But I don't know, because I mean, there's obviously change has to happen. Where it happens is the big question. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it needs to be a complete overhaul. I think there has to be a change in the psyche. You know, of everybody involved with Dundalk, as I say. I think as well, like, I think the biggest thing tonight, and even just maybe this season as a whole, is and kind of the Jerry Springer final point that I'll make is, like, it's a reality check. You know what I mean? Like, this is where we are now. We're not the team that's challenging for top 2, you know, and in my opinion, we're probably not going to be for another little while. I think, and we've seen it probably for the last 3 or 4 months, where people are very, very quick to blame ownership, and ownership probably have to take some of the blame on it. But also, I think people need to remember that, and I have no dog in that fight, just as a heads up to everybody, but people have to just be aware that, like, I think we expect Peak Six money because the name Stat Sports is attached. This $1 million company, or million euro company. Sorry, that's the American coming out at me there. But this €1 million company, but Stat Sports don't own Dundalk Football Club. You know, the two lads who own Stat Sports have a stake in Dundalk Football Club. Yeah. They're not going to invest. They don't have the money that the Hull-sizers had, they were able to just throw £1 million at the club and hope it sticks. You know, so I would just, again, I'm not trying to defend ownership or anything like that. If they obviously have some questions that they need to answer for, but I think we need to be realistic too. And I think this is an issue that the supporters have had, is we want Irish ownership, we want local ownership, but we want Peak Six money, and that can't happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's something we just need to be aware of. Now, what we would like from owners, and what I would like from owners, is I would like to see a plan in place, as you said, Chris. You know, I think we need probably
That's the thing.
a short-term plan. And I'm hoping now, as I said, without trying to come up with a positive, or with trying to come up with a positive one tonight, I'm hoping now that we're out of the cup, maybe we'll get that before the end of the season, or maybe just after the season's finished, we'll get a plan. They'll tell us something. Do you know what I mean? They'll let us know something in terms of how the club is going to be structured next year. But I think, look, it's a disappointing night. We could go on for another hour and a half talking about how disappointing it is, and we can solve every problem and probably create 10 more. But on that note, lads, I'm out. I might actually get on next week, but I'll let you know.
Hope you buy you.
We'll see.
You heard it here first.
If not, we'll see you at the Christmas party. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still waiting on my t-shirt, on my 2023 t-shirt, but Gally never sent it out to me this year. I'm disappointed. So next week I'm moving on to arseholes. All right, over and out.
Good seeing you.
Good luck.
Look.
See you.
Jim, we were just talking to Pingo there, just kind of sum up the night and the feelings, and looking at someone who's well gone at Oriel Park and a fan. It's I don't even know if the word is harder, but how can you if we can try and sum up tonight? Frustrating, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it?
It's. Sorry, go on.
No, you're all right, Jen. Go.
No, go on. Sorry, no. I think the internet infected us. Sorry.
Yeah, no, we'll just kind of get just a kind of final point. Is there an overall change needed? Pingo had mentioned, ownership and things like that. But are we? I don't think it'll be too drastic. I think fans are just fed up. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. We're just fed up of what's lacking in the field performance-wise. We definitely we know there's talent in the players that are there. Not all of them, maybe up to the level that we'd like, but some of them, definitely, having a kind of with League of Ireland experience in particular. But it just doesn't seem to be working. And the worry now is that, like Pingo said earlier, we're going to be like this for a number of seasons. Unless we get maybe.
I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to positive Jane now.
Go.
And
I prefer the other one.
No, I do think we can bring this back. As I said earlier in the podcast, I do think there's such potential there in the team. I do, and it's about conjoining the management squad, the management team, and the players. And I just feel there's a little link missing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think.
And I do think that can be brought back. We've seen it this season. We saw quality. We have seen quality football.
Yeah.
And without being like boring and stuff, the issue goes back to the subs. The issue, actually, no. Tonight, the issue goes back to you don't play the same team that are beating 3-0 at home. And that's
I think that is something we've mentioned on a number of occasions. Just the substitutions and the lineups maybe just haven't been what Stevie really wanted to get out of them. And I think that definitely is an issue over the whole season, Chris, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think Stephen is one of the first ones to say about with all the injuries he's had though as well, Jane. Like that's kind of gotten his way of playing a settled team, hasn't it?
We've all said that off the camera, Chris. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
We've all said that off the camera.
Exactly.
He's been so unfortunate with injuries. But it comes to a time where you're saying it has to get better.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're going down there to a team tonight that, to be honest with you, I would, at full time, I would have taken a draw. And if we had to go to extra time, no, I would. I think in my head, I thought we'll get the draw. We'll go to extra time. We'll take them.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you'd said to me, we'll be like the way we were at half time, I wouldn't have believed you.
No, I know. That's the thing. I wouldn't have believed you after 30 minutes either.
Yeah. And
Jane,
I know you give
your reception's breaking up a fair bit there. We might let you go.
Yeah, sorry, folks.
No, you're
Not a
right.
problem, Jane. Appreciate you coming on. Thanks very much, Jane. Cheers. It's frozen.
Back. And then there were two.
Yeah.
It's funny. On Frank's point just before that, we need outside investment. There was a potential for outside investment not that long ago from Hull.
As soon as you put it up, I was like, holy.
But there was an outcry amongst Dundalk fans saying that we don't want this. We don't want to be a feeder club for some other club. And you look at the players, Wood and stuff like that Shelbourne have gotten. It's catapulted them up the league.
Yep.
Right now, and they're good, high quality players that they're able to get from Hull right now. And we're going in unknown quantities sometimes of what we're getting in the loan market. Have we, has our ego got in the way of a potential investment opportunity there, I wonder?
Yeah, we had, I think myself, yourself and Niall Newbury had this, we nearly dedicated a full podcast to it. And this was before the Shelbourne. They got, I think it was even before they got their hands on Shelbourne. But, I think the consensus was we were definitely all for the investment and, the kind of the percentage or whatever they were taking, provided they weren't just going to throw players at a manager and say, well, Mickey Muffy needs a game, you're going to have to play him, and I want you to play him at right back, even though he's a left back or whatever. We didn't want that interference. And that, like, Damien Duff won't stand for that interference at Shelbourne. So it's obviously a win-win for everybody. And, time will tell if we've missed the boat on it. But, God, we're just see Mark Harold's Ruddlers there as well again. We're all talking about boats tonight. It's a real nautical team. But it's, time will tell. I mean, I wouldn't have said no to it, provided there was no interference from, the parent club on the manager, to say, right, well, I'm going to send you 4 players whether you like it or not. You need 2 strikers, I'm going to send you someone else, or whatever it is. Provided there wasn't that level of interference, it's a no-brainer for League of Ireland because it's, it's not like you're getting really good players from whatever it may be. Like we took Nathan Shepherd from Brentford B, and these are high-level, teams and well-scouted players. It's not like you said, we're not going to get someone for the sake of bringing in to fill a gap on loan, someone we don't know. And that would have been the benefit of it, I suppose. Well, look, hindsight, time will tell. I mean, it's just unfortunate. But I mean, look, not to say it wouldn't come along again, but I definitely it's worked out for Shells thus far. It's very short, but there doesn't seem to be any major issues with it, as far as we can tell from the outside. Yeah.
Look, I just think, if you take on board kind of what Pingu's saying and what a lot of them have said, in the comments and stuff like this, is, we definitely aren't going to get the peak 6 sort of spending with the current owners. And to a certain extent, I see that because I don't want us to go into debt to try to chase something that's unachievable. Like that has been the history of League of Ireland, hasn't it? Yeah. Like go win the league and overspend your budget by 4 or 5 times, and then your club's gone bust and you're non-existent in 10 years' time. Like, how many corks have we had?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you don't want that. There's a history with Dundalk Football Club, and you want to preserve that as best you can. And I think when the whole thing came around and people were like, well, do we want to be a feeder club for a bigger club? No, we're Dundalk Football Club. We're not. Like this multi-club model is what ownership is these days in football. Like that is the reality. You look at the Man City owners, how many clubs do they own? And each one of them is run like Man City is run.
Yeah.
But on a different continent and different countries. Like that is the way football ownership is these days. I'm sorry, but nobody wants to just invest in one club anymore. That's not really, because if you have a potential to do something, you need to, where do you fast track that good player to?
Yeah.
You're looking to try to sell them on, and that could be going against your rivals elsewhere. No, but if you own another club, you feed it in that way. And when these other people who do need games, like we're seeing at Shelbourne and stuff like that, like it's like I say, it's win-win. I just wonder how many investments opportunities are going to be available right now that's not in a feeder model, I'd be interested to see. I'm not too sure, and I think we need to figure out what we want as fans. If we don't want that sort of investment, then it's sixth in the league. It's out of the cup. It's no European anymore. I honestly feel that's the way it is, because it's massive investment. In Derry, there's still massive investment at Shamrock Rovers, and we're going to see probably even more investment in Shells down the line.
Yeah.
So where are we in the
And I think probably even the Hull owners are probably thinking, God, we might have dodged the bullet there in Oriel, because they're going to the Shelbourne, Talca Park, right in the middle of Dublin. You know, they're kind of sharing maybe a couple of miles, a couple of kilometres between themselves and Bows. You're for the best young talent. It's really for the two of them, really. I mean, Rovers are probably next level, but if you're looking to really probably get a chance to play, you've got your Shells and your Bows there as well. And yeah, look, they might have
and I do get. Yeah, I do get Frank's point there. So Frank just saying, with the whole deal, we just shaken off peak 6, and before that was Save Our Club and everything else. So they didn't want to go through that all over again for the supporters base, and I do understand that as well, because it is a valid point. But then I think, like we've mentioned how many times tonight, it's a reality check then of where we are as a football club. So if we're not going to go and take these outside investments and lose a controlling share of how our club is run, then we need to be okay with finishing outside of Europe and not being in contention to win leagues anymore, and being out of cups and stuff. And probably cup days are few and far between. And I think there's definitely elements of our fan base who've been there through, who probably just came on board during the Stephen Kenny era, and that's, you're on the crest of the wave. And you were mentioning earlier on that we, for years we took it for granted that our last game of the season was in the Aviva every year. Yeah. That's tough for that generation. But I think if we're not there, there'd be no harm, I think, for the owners to come out and just say, well, look, we can't invest in the caliber of players and the type of club that Shamrock Rovers, Shells and Derry are going to be, just so everybody knows and we all are aware. I think that sort of clarity would be beneficial, and I think, and then we can all readjust our expectations. Maybe we overachieved last year, and that's really thrown everything.
This is it, and maybe, look, I know a lot of people. There's times, and I think maybe a change on the dressing room could be the answer. Maybe the expectation levels coming down could boost better results as well. We don't know. Look, we don't know what the expectations of. We know what we want or what we thought we wanted, but we don't know what they're thinking inside in the dressing rooms. And it's definitely a bad night for the staff end of things, because I think every other message, well, there's no point saying every other message, every tweet is looking for heads to roll, and I think that's unfortunately that's where we've fallen now this season. And we didn't think it even having a bad season. We didn't think we'd probably get to this level just quite yet. But unfortunately, you could even see it tonight. Just people are not happy, and that's a real, whether that plan that you've mentioned, whether Stevie's a man to take that on, we don't know. I think if the fans had the way, probably not. But look, that's just it's a game of opinions, and that's just
exactly. And I think then there's investment coming for Drogheda down the line now as well. Some American investment there. We know the infrastructure and the plan that's with Sligo at the moment. And I think you'll see unless I think they were in a relegation playoff there, I think that would probably annoy the fan base the most. But at the moment, they know that what their investment in, they're seeing, fantastic facilities. They plan to increase them and make them even better over the next few years again. So that's a very finite plan in place. So if things aren't going well at the moment, I think the supporters in Sligo can still see where they're going. There's potential, like I said, for Drogheda there. We've seen big investment in Cork over the past while, and I think they've just had chop and change of ownership for so long that it's just been kind of turmoil is one way to put it as well. So they're probably going to be a bit of a yo-yo club, I would say, over the next wee while. But like there's huge investment there in Galway as well. Like that'd be my worry, is when all this extra money from other clubs does come in, where are we?
Yeah.
Where is our level in all of this? And that'd be my biggest fear. So I think now is the time, like Pingu mentioned, now is the time go and put some sort of a concrete plan in place and say, as it stands, this is where we are as a club. This is what we want to do, and we either get in behind that as fans or we don't. And I think that's probably where we need to go right now as a club, in my opinion. And that's what I think. We take the shock of this result and say, well, actually, where are we going?
Yeah.
And let's see if we want to get in behind that. And as Frank says, you know, we part of fundraising, everything should be with the fans, but we don't see that too much from this ownership. It's kind of they're operating Dundalk within their own realm and their own money that they have. There hasn't been any fundraising events. We played one game in Oriel Park over the past couple of weeks, and that's been it. So Oriel Park hasn't really been used. So we've got no gate receipts or anything for the past couple of weeks, really, bar one match as well. So it's, you know, all the cup matches have all been away, bar the Shamrock Rovers one. So it's been tough, you know. We've seen the books come out not that long ago when we were operating at a loss. I can only assume we're still operating at a loss. I can't think of a reason that we wouldn't. That we wouldn't be. So like these are all worrying things, and that I think it's the worry, as I always say, it's the worry that kills me on this, and I think it's the worry as Dundalk fans. I think when we were still winning on the pitch, or we were still competitive on the pitch, it definitely papered over a lot of this. But now I think that all worry is now to the front and to the fore for a lot of fans of actually, can we just a little reality check of where we're actually going right now? Can we just get that? And I think if we had some sort of clarity on that, would be most beneficial, I think, for everyone concerned.
Yeah, well, definitely reality of where we are going is another away game next week in Chicago next week. So I think we'll knock it on the head for that one, Chris. We can probably talk about what we expect next week, but I don't really think it matters at the minute. We're just kind of making sure we have a team and we have a coach and maybe some fans to go and watch the game in Chicago next week. So look, thanks for coming on. I know you're busy in Weavers Park. Thanks to Pingu, thanks to Jane. I give a shout out to David Lennon, who David had almost come on tonight, and he didn't want to come on because he, by the way, done an absolute rant that might have got him in trouble. So I do appreciate the effort, Dave. But folks, look at we normally end on there's no real positivity, but I mean, just until Inchicore next Friday night, I suppose all we can really say, even after the disappointment of Galway tonight, is come on to town. Oh, that's not playing, Chris. There we go. Bang.